Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial as reported by reliable sources. What shocking secret did Cassie Ventura's former publicist uncover in the basement of Diddy's recording studio? Did Jessica Monroe, who managed Cassie's public image from 2012 to 2018, abruptly quit her high-profile position and disappear from the entertainment entirely? And what evidence did she preserve that prosecutors are recalling the missing piece that explains years of silence in a testimony that has left the entertainment industry reeling? Jessica Monroe, once a rising star in celebrity publicity who worked closely with both Cassie and Diddy, has come forward with disturbing revelations about what she discovered beneath the gleaming surface of Diddy's music empire. For over 6 years, Monroe crafted the public narrative around Cassie's career and relationship with Diddy, all while harboring growing concerns about what was happening behind the scenes. She didn't appear as a publicity seeker, she didn't come forward for financial gain. Monroe arrived as a reluctant witness who had spent years processing the trauma of her role in what Sheno describes as a sophisticated operation designed to silence victims and manufacture consent. I entered the publicity field believing I would help artists share their stories, Monroe stated her professional composure entry, faltering. Instead, I became unwittingly complicit in concealing the truth about what was happening. Tozamian, I was supposed to protect. The decision to testify wasn't made lightly. According to sources close to the case, Monroe initially feared career devastation and potential legal repercussions due to the extensive and disclosure agreements she had signed, but as allegations mounted and other witnesses came forward, she contacted prosecutors with information about a hidden facility she had discovered beneath Diddy's recording studio, a space that, she claims, served purposes far removed from music production. If you're finding this information valuable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more breaking developments in this ongoing case. The federal courtroom fell into complete silence as Jessica Monroe was worn in the overhead lights seemed to accentuate her professional appearance, a sharp contrast to her visible being the center of attention. Diddy, seated at the defense table, maintained his composed expression, though a subtle tension was visible in his jawline. As Monroe approached the witness stand, Abadi expected a publicist to become ACI. Witness the room was tense, eyes focused on the witness stand, until Monroe removed a sleek black portfolio from her briefcase. Gasps echoed through the gallery. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. No announcement, no dramatic gesture, just Monroe opening to a page filled with what appeared to be floor plans, security protocols, and a detailed timeline of events spanning multiple years until that moment. Monroe had maintained a complete absence from public life since her abrupt career in 2018, but something had changed. Mabite was watching Cassie's testimony. Mabite was the corroborating evidence from other witnesses. Maybe it was finally feeling safe enough to speak about which had discovered whatever it was. Monroe was done keeping her knowledge to herself. She wasn't taking the stand as a celebrity insider looking for a tinge. Was there as a communications pronus who had stumbled up an information that radically changed her understanding of her role in the entertainment industry, and when she to speak, the courtroom wasn't prepared for the methodical detailed account of what she had discovered at beneath Diddy's recording studio, because what Monroe revealed about the hidden basement facility, its true purpose, and the elaborate systems designed to maintain secrecy wasn't just shocking, it provided context and physical evidence that connected multiple victims' testimonies across years of alleged abuse, evidence that explained how silence had been maintained for so long. It started like any other day of the trial. The room buzzed with low conversations. The press, hunched in their designated rows, and lawyers whispered strategies as they waited for what was listed on the docket as industry professional witness. But when the bailiff announced Jessica Monroe, the room changed. You could hear a pin drop. Some people recognized her name. Immediately others whispered questions about her relevance. But the way Monroe walked purposefully to the stand, her expression profilians composed yet everyone, this wasn't going to be peripheral testimony. The judge raised an eyebrow, and Diddy, who had been conferring with his legal team, suddenly straightened his attention, laser-focused in his former employee. Monroe took the oath, no eye contact with the defensible. She didn't even glance in Diddy's direction. I understand the significance of what I'm about to share. Monroe Bagani worked as Cassie Ventura's publicist from 2012 to 2018, a position that required close collaboration with Merck and his team. I was responsible for crafting their public narrative as Beth a couple and as individual artists. Judge allowed her to continue. And Fran, that moment on the entire trial shifted, because what Monroe was about to say wasn't speculation, it wasn't secondant information, it wasn't second professional experience backed by documented evidence she had meticulously preserved. When asked to explain her role, Monroe provided surprising detail about the intersection of publicity and control. My official title was Director of Publicity for Cassie Ventura, but in practice, all decisions required approval from Mark Combs' team. I was responsible for coordinating media appearances, manage interview questions, crafting social media content, and most relevant ensuring that any public appearances or statements aligned with the appropriate narrative about their relationship, that secure, approached carefully. Ms. Monroe, can you tell us what prompted you to leave your position in 2018 and why? Chosen to testify now, Monroe looked directly at the jury. I left because I discovered a facility beneath Mr. Call's recording studio. That fundamentally changed my understanding what I was actually supporting through my work, and I'm testifying no, but I've realized that my silence helper, unintentional, helped enable a system that caused significant harm. Did his legal team immediately object, adorging that any information Monroe attained during her employment was covered by non-disclosure agreements. But the judge, after reviewing the agreements, ruled that NDAs cannot legally prevent testimony about potential criminal activity. I've brought documentation, she said, referencing her portfolio of replants, security protocols, and most importantly, a detailed record of what I discovered and how it connects to public statements I was instructed to craft on Cassie's behalf. I've spent my entire career managing public perception, she said. I understand the difference between mage management and systematic deception. What? I discovered went far beyond standard publicity practices, shuddering slightly toward the courtroom. This wasn't just about protecting privacy. This way's infrastructure designed for control and coercion. Monroe told the courtroom that it started like many concerning discoveries with something that initially seemed innocent. It commutes fruit. Routine publicity work, the way she explained it. It was supposed to be a standard tour of the recording studio for a potential feature. Story, normal media relations. I'd been coordinating simple access for years, so I didn't question the extensive security patrols. But the moment Monroe accessed a restricted area off the studio, she knew something was off. The main recording facility had state-of-the-art security fingerprint scanners, multiple checkpoints, constantly rating access codes during a walkthrough for a planned media feature, used a bathroom that was supposedly off-limits. When returning, I took a wrong turn and found myself in a hallway with a keypad-secured elevator that wasn't on any of the building plans I'd been given. Second, I asked about it. The security item became visibly agitated. That should have been the first red flag. They said it was for archive storage, master recordings and valuable equipment, but their reaction felt like something else, like I'd stumbled onto something he wasn't supposed to know existed. She was escorted back to the main studio area's professional atmosphere became inappreciably tense. There were explicit elevator to media representatives. It felt like everyone was watching to see if she would ask further questions. Monroe said that after that incident, she began noticing patterns in Cassie's behavior following studio sessions. Ethapond most dramatically. After late-night recording sessions, Cassie would arrive at media appearances the next morning with what I now recognize as trauma responses. Dissociation, memory gaps, physical discomfort. She would repeatedly say things like, I don't remember much from last night, or the session is kind of a blur. At the time, I attributed this to the demanding schedule and possibly recreational substance. I was instructed to schedule later days after certain studio sessions with specific guidance to avoid close-up photography or extended reviews. The courtroom remained silent as Monroe opened her portfolio. I started documenting these patterns, dates, behaviors, specific instructions I received about managing Cassie's public appearances following certain studio sessions. She read directly from an entry dated March 15, 2016 post-studio day. Extremely withdrawn, instructed to cancel Jimmy Fallon appearance, citing vocal strain. DC team insistent on 48-hour media blackout. When asked about Sizwell being told she's just processing creative direction. She later texted asking if we could talk somewhere. Not in the building meeting, never happened. Duck team said she was resting and unavailable. Monroe paused, collecting herself professionally. Over time, I began to see correlations between these episodes and specific instructions about Cassie's public narrative. She continued rating entries that documented increasingly concerning pattern scheduled social media posts created in advance to give the impression of normal activity during periods when Cassie was unrecognizable. Prepared statements about their passion for the creative process that she never actually said, and carefully staged photo opportunities to signal to counter any potential rumors about her well-being. The revelation came when Monroe described her eventual discovery of the basement facility in late 2017. I arrived early for a scheduled meeting and observed Cassie being escorted from the elevator I had previously been told was for archive storage. She appeared and was being physically supported by two security team members. When she saw me, there was a moment off hot I could only describe as desperate or cognition before a security member positioned himself between us. I was told she was feeling unwell after an intense creative session, and my meeting was rescheduled. This incident prompted me to investigate for using the access I had as part of the publicity team. I reviewed building plans filed with the city and discovered that the included a substantial basement level that wasn't acknowledged in any of the materials provided to media or business partners. Through careful observation and by gradually gaining the trust of certain staff members, I eventually gained access to the basement. level. What I found was no archive storage. It was a fully equipped space with several distinct areas, a room filled with surveillance equipment monitoring, multiple locations, a room with recording equipment that wasn't for music production, and most disturbingly, it appeared to be living quarters with a bedroom that had no personal effects but showed signs of regular use. Monroe said. She continued her investigation discreetly, realizing that direct questions would alert Diddy's team to her concerns. Instead, what she uncovered through careful observation revealed a sophisticated system of monitoring and control. There were detailed protocols for handling situations. Staffed energy for episodes when artists or guests became distressed. Some involved sedatives described as creative answers outlined as privacy. Maintenance Thor were others that specifically dreads evidence management and narrative control. She paused, maintaining her professional composure with visibly effort. I began to recognize that my publicity work wasn't just promoting an artist, it was covering for something much more. Concerning Monroe, continued, her voice steady but tense. After discovering the basement facility, I received what felt like a test. Diddy said of security approached me about a hypothetical PR situation involving compromised footage of an unnamed artist. He asked how I would handle media inquiries if such footage ever leaked in. I suggested standard crisis management protocols. He shared that they had more effective methods of ensuring Zach's situations never reached the crisis stage. She thought it was just an abstract professional discussion until she received a USB drive at her office. It was unmarked. Inside was what appeared to be surveillance footage from the facility. I almost couldn't process what I was seeing, but I made myself watch it. It showed Cassie in a clearly impaired state being recorded with it. Her knowledge or consent. There was a voice off camera, recognizably Mark Holmes directing both her actions and the recording itself. The footage ended with explicit instructions about leverage and ensuring continued operation. Testified that viewing this footage transformed her understanding. After all, I realized I wasn't just managing an artist's image, I was sunk knowingly participating in covering up systematic manipulation and potential abuse. In her final months of employment, observed increasing security around the basement facility and stricter confrontation of information staff who had previously been willing to discuss certain aspects of the operations that became unreachable or where a place new NDAs were circulated with substantially increased penalties for disclosure. She said, that's when the ethical crisis intensified. I'd get calls at all hours about narrative adjustments. He maintained professional responsiveness. Suddenly I was being included in meetings about reputation protection than genuine publicity. I wash on evidence of what would happen to Cassie's career if she ever became incooperative. Was instructed to draft statements she would never see but would be released in her name if necessary. I knew what it wasted was preparation for potential damage control. They were creating a system where they could counter any allegations before they were even made, and so for months Monroe said nothing. While internally processing the ethical implications, she performed her duty as maintained her professionalism, focused in finding ways to potentially help Cassie. But every time I tried to create an opportunity for Cassie to speak freely in interview, without pre-approved questions, a social appearance without Diddy's team present, it would be intercepted and modified or cancelled. I realized the extent to which her public presence was being controlled. She looked around the courtroom. He didn't just manage her career, he created an entire infrastructure to monitor, control, and if necessary discredit her. And that, Monroe said, was what finally drove me to leave industry entirely. Monroe Pausa glanced at the jury and leaned closer to the microphone. It wasn't just the basement facility, that was just the physical manifestation, she said from that moment on. Everything she did professionally felt like potential in something deeply troubling. She explained that directives would come through the established publicity canals, specific narratives to maintain win. She expressed concerns about the authenticity of certain statements attributed to Cassie. Things would shift behind the scenes. I'd raise an ethical concern on Monday, and by Thursday, I'd find my access to Cassie restricted or me role in upcoming media opportunities diminished. She said, this didn't happen once or twice, it became a record as a blathering. He didn't have to issue direct reads to me, the system did it for him. Security team, the legal department, management structure. He had created an environment where questioning the prove narrative had immediate superficial consequence. Monroe's voice took on a deeper, more solid tone. I maintained my position for months. After discovering the basement facility, I convinced myself he could potentially help. By staying button, I witnessed something that made continuing impossible, she said. The breaking point came during preparations for a major interview. I was finalizing interview parameters with a major application, establishing boundaries that I had been told were Cassie's preferences. When I managed to speak with Cassie directly about these boundaries, she looked confused and said, I never asked for any of that. I actually want to talk about what's really happening. Before she could continue, a member of Diddy's team interrupted and separated us. She described feeling a profound shift in her understanding. Then I received a call from Diddy himself, not from his publicity team, but directly. Hesed, Jessica, we need to be clear about something. The narrative isn't Casisto control everything goes through methods, not negotiable. She described feeling like her professional world had collapsed. I realized in that moment that Ty wasn't serving Cassie's interests at all. I was unwittingly helping maintain a system of control over her public voice. Monroe said she spent several days, all the evidence she had gathered, the basement facility, the surveillance systems, the prepared statements, the controlled media access, it was all connected, a comprehensive stint designed to ensure that Cassie could never tell her own story. She said, breaking point wasn't fear, it was cynical clarity. I realized that continuing in my role made me complicit in something I found deeply disprigno. Career advancement or financial security was worth that moral compromise, she told the court. She resigned. After this realization, he submitted my resignation, cited personnel reasons, and declined the substantial incentive offered to extend my contract. I took only my personal notes and documentation of what I had observed, information I believed might someday be important if Cassie ever found the opportunity to speak freely. She looked at the jury. I wasn't just a publicist managing an image. I had become part of a system designed to silence Simeon's authentic voice and experience. Then she looked briefly toward the defense table, and the basement facility was just a physical space. It was representative of an entire opportunity around control, leverage, and silencing. For her final statement, the judge allowed Monroe to address the context of her testimony. Shermond ceded her professional demeanor intact, despite the emotional weight of her words. You built a publicity machine that appeared to celebrate artists. She began. You called it promotion. You called it brand building. But what I observed was a sophisticated stim designed to control narratives and silence potential accusations. The defense team whispered urgently among themselves. Diddy maintained his composite expression, though a muscle visible in his jaw. I witnessed the gap between public image and private reality, observed the methods used to insert through surveillance and leverage. I documented the systematic approach to preventing authentic expression. You created infrastructure designed to maintain control over how people could tell their own stories. Then Monroe referenced Harriers and publicity. These weren't standard industry practices I've worked with. Numerous high-profile clients, the basement facility, the surveillance, the prepared counter-narratives, these went far beyond legitimate image management. Monroe addressed the jury directly. I think this is just about celebrity publicity or image management. You're missing the true significance. This weighs about creating systems that made it virtually impossible for someone to speak their truth. Those systems relied on people like me participating, often without fully understanding what we were in a bling. Then she returned her attention to the court as a whole. The basement facility wasn't just about recording music based on what I observed in the footage. I saw it served multiple functions, creating leverage, monitoring compliance, and generating material that could be used to discredit anyone while might speak out. She concluded her testimony and closed her portfolio, waiting calmly for further questions. And he maintained his composite, but something had shifted in his demeanor, because the testimony from Simeon, who understood both the public relations machinery and the hidden infrastructure, revealed the sophisticated nature of the control system that prosecutors had been established. When Monroe completed her testimony, she didn't look triumphant. She looked like someone who had finally fulfilled a professional and ethical obligation that had weighed on her for years. The courtroom remained tense, processing the implications of her revelations. Even the judge appeared to connecting this testimony to previous witnesses' accounts. Some of the jurors were taking extensive notes, and the defense team was huddled in intense conversation, clearly reassessing their strategy in light of this unexpected aspect on their client's operations. Monroe didn't engage with the press. When she exited, she didn't make statements, did acknowledge cameras. She walked out of the courthouse with the same professional dignity with which she had entered, though observers noted she appeared visibly unburdened. When asked later by reporters if she feared professional repercussions, she reportedly responded, "There are professional consequences to speaking out, certainly, but there are more to remaining silent that I found more difficult to bear." But outside its courtroom, the impact was on the beginning to register. Entertainment publicists held emergency discussions about ethical boundaries. Media outlets released coverage of celebrity relations. Industry figures with connections to Diddy issued carefully worded statements expressing shock and concern about the alleged basement facility behind closed doors. Entertainment lawyers analyzed the implications for non-disclosure agreements. Industry-wide public relations professions discussed the ethical dimensions of their work, and while many attempted to distance themselves from case, social media was already oximing years of carefully crafted public narratives. With new skepticism, previous testimony was being abbreviated in light of the systematic control. Monroe had described Cassie's public appearances, and statements over years were being re-examined for signs off the control. Monroe had detailed, and most significantly, the elaborate infrastructure designed to maintain Diddy's preferred narratives. physically oppressed in by the hidden basement was being recognized as evidence of premeditation and consciousness of guilt. The public wasn't just shocked by the revelations, they were processing a new understanding. OFO power operates in the entertainment industry that they consume through media might be the product not just of standard publicity, but of sophisticated systems designed to silence authentic voices and experiences. The case against Diddy had expanded beyond individual allegations to reveal the infrastructure that had enabled years of alleged behavior, and as this trial continues to unfold, we'll bring you the most thorough and accurate updates available. If you found this report informative, please like and subscribe to our channel, because understanding the systems that enable misconduct is just as important as exposing the misconduct itself.